Hey, I hope you guys are doing good today. We are going to be watching What Did World War II Soldiers Eat? And it is the SOS meal. And I know nothing about this. I have heard of it, I've never made it, but I'm very interested in learning about it. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting one. If you do get a chance, I'd appreciate if you can leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. And I will have Max's video linked in my description below. So be sure to go and give him a like and subscribe. He does an amazing, amazing job. All right, well, let's see what this SOS is all about. Let's go. All right, before we start, who is behind us? It looks so cute. Let me move my head. Uh, it looks adorable. Who is that? All right, let's go.
Few things improve troop morale better than a hot meal, even if the name of that hot meal kinda sucks. Like this favorite frontline breakfast from World War II, creamed dried beef on toast, better known as shit on a shingle. So thank you to my Patreon patrons for constantly
Let me know if you've had this. If you make it, do you still eat it? Did you grow up eating it? Because it seems like I feel like there's probably like some older people that have kind of like this has been something that they've eaten throughout their childhood. So let me know.
supporting this channel, especially on videos like this that'll probably get demonetized because I keep saying shit on a shingle. This time on Tasting History. So I am releasing this video on Veterans Day, or Armistice Day,
Oh,
or
nice.
Remembrance Day, depending on where you are. And
Yeah.
every Veterans Day, I remember my grandpa, Gramps, who used to tell me stories about when he was in World War II. He was part of the medical corps, and he would tell me these stories about when he was over in England and France and even in Germany just after the end of the war. And I credit those stories with giving me my love for history, because here I am, a 7-year-old playing with his micro machines, and this old guy is telling me about stuff that happened to a 7-year-old so long ago. But the way that he told the stories was so engaging and made it so personal
Aw.
that I was entranced, and I just loved him. I couldn't get enough.
I love that. That is such a wholesome moment, even if it's like talking about war and stuff. But like that's really like a very endearing memory to have.
That I was
Aw.
entranced, and I just loved him. I couldn't get enough. And so I guess you can kind of say that the reason that Tasting History is a thing is because of those stories
Oh, I
that my
love that.
veteran Gramps used to tell me. And so
I love that though. I absolutely love that. And it's you can find such interest in topics and passions and things in like the most unlikely places, which I think is just a kind of a cool thing.
is a thing is because of those stories that my veteran Gramps used to tell me. And so I figure what better way to honor my grandpa here on this Veterans Day than to make a dish that he might have eaten when he was in the military, even if he very purposefully left it out of the stories he was telling his 7-year-old grandson. Because there was no way my grandpa would ever say the phrase "shit on a shingle." Or as the recipe from the US War Department in 1944 called it, creamed dried beef, which for 6 gallons called for 7 pounds of dried beef, a pound of fat melted, flour, evaporated milk, water, and pepper. Separate beef into small pieces, mix melted fat and flour, stir until smooth. Mix milk and water, heat. Add gradually to flour mixture, stirring constantly. Add chipped beef and pepper. Heat to boiling point, reduce heat, and simmer about 10 minutes.
I have never had this chipped beef, but everything else in here, I mean, it looks very simple. It looks like you probably get your like calories and fats and like some other good stuff in here, and it's probably filling. So I'm guessing that that's kind of all you cared about at the time was just try to get what you need and make it, I guess, edible enough.
Note, serve hot over toast. Now obviously, since this makes 6 gallons or 100 servings,
Oh my
I'm going
gosh.
to make a reduced quantity today. But I do think it's really interesting how they give the quantities in the original recipe. Besides pounds and gallons, they also measure in number 56 dippers. Like 1 pound of fat would be a half number 56 dipper, because you wouldn't often have a scale on hand when you were out in the field, but you would probably have the standard quart-sized number 56 dipper.
Oh,
And the writing on the dipper was so standard that you could use it to make measurements as well. Another book specifies 1
nice.
cup of liquid comes to the top of the date figure, 2 cups to the top of
Oh,
the manufacturer's letter, and 3 cups of liquid will come to the top of the US letters.
is that intentional or is that just how it just kind of worked out? If it was intentional, that's genius.
Of the manufacturer's letter, and 3 cups of liquid will come to the top of the US letters. I of course have no dipper, and I'm not making 6 gallons worth, so for a smaller portion, what you'll need is just over half a pound or 250
Okay, so here we go. This is what chipped beef is. I have no clue. I don't know. I'm not I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at here. I would try it though. It kind of looks like dried up salami maybe, like but not salami. I don't know. I honestly have no clue. I am curious to know what this tastes like though. So yeah, let me know. Let me know if you guys have had this, and if you have had it, is it gross? Is it okay? Is it just nothing to write home about? Which I'm assuming that's kind of what it is.
grams of chipped beef. So this is chipped beef or dried beef, and they come now in these little jars. You'll need 4 for this recipe. And it's basically ground, very salted beef that is then pressed
Okay.
into a form, dried, and then sliced very thinly. And when you open it,
Does it stink?
kind of reminds me of the smell of a can of dog food when you open it. But
Okay. So it's a little bit stinky. Okay. Okay.
kind of reminds me of the smell of a can of dog food when you open it. But that smell goes away, kind of.
I like how he's like trying to reassure us, like it's only temporary. It's not that bad. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But it's all wrapped up like this, and they kind of remind me of Pringles. Yeah, so this is what you need for this recipe. Then 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of fat. This
I I didn't like I can't say I've ever seen this at my grocery store, and I really had no idea that this was that easy to go get because like that jar he has from Hormel. I mean, like, they make a lot of like very I guess like cheap package type stuff. Like they have like a chili and stew and some other things. They have similar things. I mean, I think the only thing I've ever had from them is like their canned chili. Everything else from them always looked a little questionable to me, so I've never eaten anything else from theirs. Um so I am surprised that this is like such a, I guess a everyday stocked item here because I honestly had no idea.
you need for this recipe. Then 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of fat. This recipe is not specific in what kind of fat, but in the cook's manual from 1910, which may be the earliest recipe for this dish, it says butter is preferred, so that's what I'm using. A heaping 1/3 cup or 40 grams of flour, 1½ cups or 350 milliliters of evaporated milk, 1½ cups or 350 milliliters of water, 1 teaspoon of
I will say I definitely don't use evaporated milk very often. So this is kind of interesting because yeah, this is that evaporated milk is not something that I really hard. I could probably count how many times I've really used it. So um, I'm it's interesting to see like some of these recipes that use it just because like um for me like I mean I don't really cook anything crazy either, but but, I definitely can say that I can't say that I really ever used, evaporated milk in almost, like, anything, really.
black pepper, and a few slices of bread for toast. So the recipe from 1910, which was probably used during World War I, also includes parsley and uses beef stock. It also uses 15 pounds of chipped beef for 60 servings rather than 7 for 100 servings like the World War II version. So it was 4 ounces per serving, and then by World War II it was just over 1 ounce per serving. Just thought that
Damn.
was interesting. But to make the World War II version of SOS, chop the chipped beef into small pieces and then peel everything apart and put it into a bowl and soak it with some water. Some old recipes say that the beef is so salty that it needs to be scalded in boiling water. I don't think the modern version is
Oh my god, that is salty. Although I wonder how salty this one is, because just because nowadays, like, we can make stuff so much more efficiently and kinda, like, just, like, a little bit better, so, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not salty. Just by looking at it, I feel like there is a lot of salt in this. So, but maybe it's not quite as salty.
say that the beef is so salty that it needs to be scalded in boiling water. I don't think the modern version is as salty, so if you soak it
Yeah.
for 15 or 20 minutes, that's going to be just fine. While it does mix the
That seems so weird though to, like, soak your meat. I mean, that's just I don't know. That this is a new one.
so if you soak it for 15 or 20 minutes, that's going to be just fine. While it does mix the evaporated milk and water together and heat it over low heat. Then separately melt the butter over low heat in a pot and add the flour and whisk together. Let it cook for about a minute, then slowly pour in the hot milk mixture. You want to constantly be stirring and let it cook for 3 or 4 minutes while it thickens. Then whisk in the pepper, then finally add the chipped beef. Then bring the pot to a boil and then turn the heat down so it just simmers for about 10 minutes, and it'll thicken up even more during that time.
Even though I have no concept of what this beef tastes like, this doesn't look terrible. Doesn't really look the greatest, but I mean, like, there's a lot of food that doesn't necessarily, like, look the best, but is delicious. So, I'm not gonna really judge it on looks here so much, but, I mean, like, throw this over some toast, it really doesn't sound so bad.
Now, one of the things that actually inspired me to do a video for Veterans Day was a conversation that I was having with an old friend that I used to know in New York who now runs a website called
Oh,
veteranlife.com.
nice.
The site is dedicated to providing veterans and military families with different resources and benefits that they might not otherwise know of. And it actually also has a lot of wonderful things for civilians, because I am about as civilian as you can get, and yet I spent time on this site because they have a whole area of
Oh,
military
wow.
history. I read a wonderful story about the Navy's ice cream barges from World War II. They were basically giant floating refrigerators in the Pacific that provided ice cream to the sailors. And I think that that is going to have to be the topic for a video in the future.
That sounds like a great one. Also, if you are a veteran, thank you for your service. Thank you.
But for now, let's talk about the men who would have been making that ice cream, or more specifically, on a shingle. So whenever discussing a topic as large as American military cooking during World War II, there are so many variables and situations that there are going to be exceptions to everything and exceptions to the exceptions. There was fighting going on all over the world, and there were different levels of preparedness at any given time, so even the military's best laid plans often went awry. But in general, this is what things should have been like if you were cooking in a field kitchen. Typically, each company of about 150 to 200 men would have their own field kitchen with maybe a half a dozen cooks. With some help, they could set up the entire kitchen in under 30 minutes. The goal was to
In under 30 minutes, that is efficient. That is efficient. And then you are able to feed all these men. I mean, that's good. That's good. That's impressive.
have cooks. With some help, they could set up
I love these photos.
the entire kitchen in under 30 minutes. The goal was to have the kitchen close to the men that they were feeding, but depending on a lot of things, terrain, the proximity to the enemy, sometimes they could be 100 yards back or 10 miles back.
Oh
The
my
nice
gosh.
thing about being further back is then they could often team up with 3 or 4 other kitchens to become a battalion-sized kitchen. Also being further back meant that they would be less likely to be the target of enemy fire, so that they could maybe do some cooking during the day, because if they were too close, then all the cooking had to be done before sunup and after sundown. Now the kitchen could be anywhere from a nearby building to a tent to the back of a truck.
Look at this right in the back of a truck. This is cool.
But they all had the same equipment. Most important was the gasoline-powered M1937 range stove. It was very versatile and could perform all of the functions of any stovetop and oven in a normal kitchen. They were of course rather compact, but usually a company had 2 or 3 that they could work with. And one training video from World War II said,
If you lose your oven, take a couple of barrels, Cover them with clay and bake your bread.
Now, some of the other equipment included large immersion heaters that could heat up a barrel or even a huge tub of water rather quickly that could be used then for cleaning dishes or for making food and for taking a hot bath, preferably using new water. And speaking of
I bet that was like a treat if you could just have like a nice hot bath, shower, or whatever. Oh man.
food and for taking a hot bath, preferably using new water. And speaking of water, when it came to drinking water, it needed to be purified and then was kept in a Lister bag. This was
Oh,
meant to
right.
distribute purified water for up to 100 men. Then there were Mermite cans. These were insulated containers, usually
I've heard of the mermaid cans.
7 gallons and meant to hold 3 or 4 inserts. Like a giant thermos, they kept things hot or cold and
Yep.
were often used when the kitchen was far from the front line. Food could be prepared at the kitchen and then put into the containers, into the Mermite can, put on a truck, and brought to the front line to serve the men. But if you were doing this, you really wanted to pay attention to which Mermite can you took, because some were labeled with ETO blood bank, with blood meant for transfusions given near the front lines.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't want to mix that up. You definitely don't want to have that mistake. Ooh. Ooh.
Mixing
Gosh, that's cool though. These uh these huge containers though for the blood bank, like the ETO blood bank containers. I love this is all so cool. I love seeing stuff like this.
ETO blood bank, with blood meant for transfusions given near the front lines. Mixing those up would be a mistake you would not make twice.
Yep.
But assuming that you got the right can, what kind of meals are you loading them with? Well, officially, you have very little say in it. Especially starting around World War II, there was a big push to make sure that the troops were getting enough of the right minerals and vitamins. And so dishes and entire menus were created by nutritionists back in Washington. And in one video from 1943 about the nutrition program, they talk about how they started out by examining the diets of the enemy armies. The Japanese were supposed to have extreme energy given to them by a simple handful of rice, and
The Nazis are supposed to have a Superman vitamin pill.
though the
A Superman vitamin pill. Man, I think we are all still chasing that dream of of finding that vitamin.
attempt at replicating the effects of this pill with mere vitamins did not really work because actually this superhuman pill was something called Pervitin, which had methamphetamine that would give the Germans a lot of energy.
That gives you quite the edge. That gives you quite the edge. I definitely don't think I want meth in my daily vitamin, but you know, that would give you the edge. That would definitely give you quite the edge. This is why history is so great. This is why history is kind of amusing and it's crazy. It's like when you see stuff like this. This is why I think history is just awesome.
Had methamphetamine that would give the Germans a lot of energy if short-lived. Some say that the Blitzkrieg couldn't have happened without Pervitin because some soldiers had to stay up for days at a time. But while vitamin B might have not replicated the effects of Pervitin, the military did put together a top-notch diet plan for the cooks out in the field to follow. Menus for dinner could include chicken a la king with lyonnaise carrots and an apricot upside-down cake for dessert.
Oh,
And all
wow.
of the ingredients would be dried or salted or otherwise preserved and shipped all the way from the US to the front lines all over the world. But of course, most of these ingredients never actually made it to where they were going, or at least not in a timely fashion, so you didn't have everything at once, so the field cooks usually had to cobble something together with what they had available. Though depending on their location, that could be something pretty nice depending on where you were. When the 10th Mountain Division was in Italy in 1945, Corporal John Stone said, "We used lots of fresh Italian ingredients, as much as we could no matter what we were cooking. We also learned to cook a lot of pizza. This woman and her daughter, they taught us how to do it right."
That's awesome. This is what's really cool too is like, when you have to be resourceful and kind of use what you got. And if you're somewhere where people aren't, uh, where they aren't the enemy, then you can kind of create something really magical between, cooking, learning about each other. You're kind of traveling the world a little bit. And so, you get a lot of experience and food wise, you're probably going to learn lots of things that you didn't know what other people are doing with their food. So this is cool. This is very cool.
You made do with what you had, and many times that actually meant field rations. Basically, if you were near the front, at least one meal a day was going to be pre-packaged field rations. And for some troops, it could be every meal, every day, for
Right.
days or even weeks on end. Now, I want to do a whole video on the field rations of World War II and how they evolved into the modern MRE, or meal ready to eat. And actually, I should try to do that with Steve MRE,
Yes.
who actually eats these old foods.
Yes.
I'll
I love Steve MRE. I love his channel. Oh man, let me know if you guys watch him too because he is like a big favorite of mine. I love that he knows him. Where is this collab? I want to see this.
to do that with Steve MRE, who actually eats these old foods. I'll put a link to where you can watch him eat actual rations from
Yep.
World War II. But since it was part of a
I have seen where he got sick, I think twice, and it didn't seem like it was uh, a good day.
where you can watch him eat actual rations from World War II. But since it was part of a cook's job to make sure that everyone had the field rations that they would need, we should touch on it now. So there were lots of types of field rations that you could get depending on where you were and at what point during the war you were at. But between 1942 and 1945, the two most common were the C ration and the K ration. The C ration was 3 meals, each made up of an M unit or meat unit and a B unit, which was the bread or dessert. The M unit was the main dish. You could have beef stew with peas or a canned meat and vegetable stew. At the beginning of the war, there was pretty much only different stews, but later on, you might have meat and spaghetti and tomato sauce, eggs and potatoes, or pork and beans. Then the B unit had some hardtack, though it was supposedly softer and easier on the teeth than that of previous wars, the biscuits being made of soybeans, wheat, egg, and lard.
I love how hardtack just keeps making appearances. I just love it. I just that is so perfect. Really shows how well hardtack has held up and like why people keep using it. I mean, I totally get it. I totally understand why it keeps getting used over and over.
Pretty tasty biscuit.
Then there'd be some coffee powder or sometimes lemon drink. Then there'd be some sugar, salt, maybe chocolate, and often cigarettes and gum. All told, the 3 meals provided 37 to 3,800 calories per day
That's
and
really
could be
good.
eaten cold, but were better when they were cooked.
3,800 calories a day. I mean, I guess depending on what you're doing, like maybe you might need a little bit more than that, but overall, I mean, 3,800 calories is that's pretty solid. That is pretty solid.
Now, the C ration was a good amount of food and was quite varied, but it was heavy. And so, if you were remote or a paratrooper, you would get the K ration. They weighed less, partly because they had less calories. They had 2,830 calories per day and were supposed to be much less edible. Things like the fatty pork loaf and the maltose and dextrose tablets would often just get thrown out by the
Oh,
troops. The thing is,
I mean, that definitely doesn't sound very good. Doesn't sound very tasty. It kind of, ugh, I can't blame them.
the fatty pork loaf and the maltose and dextrose tablets would often just get thrown out by the troops. The thing is, the K ration was meant to be used for no more than 5 days, but there are stories of soldiers living almost exclusively off of them for weeks at a time.
Oh my
One
gosh.
unit, known as Merrill's Marauders, lived almost exclusively on K rations for 5 months in Burma. And after 5 months of fatty pork loaf every day, imagine how happy they would have been to walk into a field kitchen and be offered something like a plate of hot on a shingle.
Oh my god, that would have probably been like the best day of your life if you were having to eat those rations for weeks or months or whatever, like and then you finally are able to eat in a field kitchen. Bro, I bet they were just stoked. That was probably like the best day.
So once everything is simmered for about 10 minutes, toast your bread and then ladle the creamed beef onto the toast and serve. And here we are, World War II creamed dried beef. I'm gonna kind of
Let's go.
spread it around here on the shingle.
It looks very thick. This looks pretty thick. But I'm not judging on whether or not it's gross or not. I mean it kind of looks like a chunkier like gravy type deal with whatever, however this meat tastes. So I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely not. I'm not hating on it.
Creamed dried beef. I'm gonna kind of spread it around here on the shingle because I feel like they got to go together. All right, here we go.
What do we think?
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
All right,
Uh-oh.
it needs the shingle.
What?
The toast is really necessary for the texture because once the toast kind of had softened, the texture of the actual beef,
It's not
it's
good.
not terribly pleasant. It's just kind of chewy. That said, the flavor of the whole thing, not that bad. In fact, it actually reminds me of the gravy that my grandpa used to make, though he would put it over biscuits and it was made with bacon fat. So if you want to make this with bacon fat,
Ooh, yeah, I bet that'd give it a little step up. Plus, I mean, I guess if you didn't want to use the chipped beef, you could probably use maybe ground beef or something like that. You know, like if you didn't want to go like full World War II extreme, you could probably modify this and use a different meat and like maybe add a little bit to it to kind of, spruce it up a little bit and upgrade it a bit. I think this is like a good base to work with though.
it is quite good. That said, the flavor is good. It could use more spice, probably some
Yeah.
more pepper. I mean, it's a pretty small amount of pepper for that quantity that they used. So you could add more pepper. You're not being rationed, hopefully. What I would think is actually really good is just a different meat, like ground
Oh
up
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
sausage
yeah.
or cut up
Mm-hmm.
bacon or something like that. Something that just the texture is a little more pleasing to the palate. That said, when you compare it to a lot of military foods, it's not that bad, especially the older military foods out in the field. This one, I could see looking forward to it. Anyway, if you are
That's a very good assessment of that for sure. And I would have to agree.
a veteran or in the military or a part of a military family or just interested in military history and lifestyle, make sure to visit veteranlife.com. And for those of you lucky enough to have a grandparent still around, even if they weren't in World War II, go ask them to tell you a story because I'm sure that they would love
Aw.
to, and you'll appreciate it when you're older. So don't forget to like, subscribe, have a fantastic Veterans Day or Armistice Day or Remembrance Day, and I will see you next time on Tasting History.
I really enjoyed this one. This was very interesting. And as far as our SOS goes, I would try it. I do think that if you wanted to maybe update it, you definitely could. If you wanted to be more retro, I guess, or authentic, you could totally do it this way. But it honestly, like as far like because I don't know what chipped beef tastes like, other than I have a feeling it's probably just kind of salty and like he said, the texture isn't great. I would still try it like this. I totally would. So let me know if you make anything similar, if you've had anything like this, if you like this or you hate it, or just let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you guys being here. Be sure to go and like and subscribe to Tasting History with Max Miller. He does just such an amazing job with all of these videos, and I really, really enjoyed this one. This was a really, really good one. So be sure to give him lots of support. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys had a great day, and I will see you in the next one.